heavenly goddess, tell me of the many woes brought on the Greeks by the wrath of Achilles.
The opening line of the Iliad underscores the rage that consumed both the Achaeans and the Trojans over the course of the Trojan War, denoting Achilles to be the epitome of the fury that, quote, turns a sensible man violent and grows like smoke in men's hearts until it becomes sweeter than dripping honey.
But stronger than all others is Achilles, king of Phthia, son of Peleus and Thetis. This famous hero has been made invulnerable by divine will.
Known for his godlike rage and prowess in battle, Achilles has been attributed with the defeat of armies and gods alike, almost single-handedly causing the fall of Troy in the final battles of the Trojan War. Despite gaining near impenetrability from bathing in the river Styx, Achilles' inhuman strength was attributed to his rage. Achilles' wrath was shown to know no bounds, extending even to his own Achaean forces as retribution for Agamemnon's slight in which he took Briseis from Achilles. Yet Achilles' rage was a secondary emotion, both a result of his inflated pride and damaged ego over the loss of Briseis. However, while his fury at Agamemnon, quote, brought countless woes to the Achaeans and sent the souls of many brave heroes to Hades, this rage was nothing in comparison to the fury following the death of his advisor and closest friend Patroclus. Achilles found himself consumed by rage so rich that his compatriots feared that, quote, the prince would cut his own throat with iron upon learning of his friend's death.
Hector cut his throat.
The difference between Achilles' rage over the loss of Briseis and the death of Patroclus is evidenced through his self-reflection on his role in the events that led to the death of Patroclus. In a conversation with his mother Thetis, Achilles regrets his wish that the Achaeans should suffer for allowing Briseis to be taken from him.
What satisfaction may I have if Patroclus, my loyal companion, dearer to me than life, is dead? Mother, I cannot stay or live amongst men unless I avenge his death.
Achilles admonishes his reaction following the loss of Briseis, attributing his lack of action to the loss of Patroclus. Quote, since I was not a light for Patroclus or others who were overpowered by godlike Hector, and since I sat beside the ships like a useless lump of soil, I, who in war am the best of all bronze-clad Achaeans, though others are better in counsel, then let strife among gods and men cease along with the rage that turns a sensible man violent. True rage, then, is not born from a damaged ego or inflated pride. It is a reaction stemming from love and one's acknowledgement of the fear of its loss. Bell Hooks explores the human obsession with death and loss in her book All About Love, claiming that the fixation with either death or loss are born from fear, and in turn inhibit people from truly living. Quote, if we become obsessed with the idea of death hiding and waiting for us in ambush, we are not making death more real, but life less real. Our life is divided against itself. It becomes a tug-of-war between the love and fear of itself. Achilles encapsulates this dichotomy. His love for Patroclus transforms into a fear of loss so consuming that it overtakes his entire existence. He ceases to fight for life and instead fights out of despair, making death his only objective. Achilles forgoes all purpose-aside revenge, allowing anguish to manifest as rage so to consume his pain. Quote, for his heart commands him not to live on among men unless Hector is slain by his spear and loses his life as payment for spoiling Patroclus, son of Menelaus. Hooks asserts that true love is fostered through love of life itself, yet Achilles' desire to, quote, set aside his thoughts of grief and stifle the pain that fills his heart by securing revenge in Patroclus' name moves further from this as he surrenders himself to vengeance. His obsession with avenging Patroclus prevents him from healing, highlighting how grief, mistaken for love, can perpetuate endless cycles of violence. Love, as defined by Hooks, is an active choice rooted in the commitment to, quote, extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. In this context, Achilles' motivation for re-entering the war becomes more complex. While he re-enters the war in the name of love, his actions primarily result in destruction and further grief. By analyzing his actions through the framework provided by Hooks, it becomes clear that love, when conflated with rage and vengeance, ceases to be love at all, but rather becomes a catalyst for suffering, dragging others into a cycle of violence.
Love of power, power of love. Two demons who cannot tolerate sleeping.
While it is undeniable that Achilles cares for Patroclus, his love for Patroclus does not align with the kind of love Hooks describes in her book. Achilles does not channel his emotions into healing or connection. Instead, he allows his rage to consume him, leading to the slaughter of Hector and the desecration of his corpse. While Achilles acknowledged that his wrath was self-destructive in the conversation with his mother, calling for the cease of, quote, the rage that turns a sensible man violent, he continued his violent path nonetheless. However, Achilles' love for Patroclus does manifest in moments of self-reflection. When Priam begged Achilles for the return of Hector's body, Priam's pleas, quote, filled Achilles with a longing for his own father, and the two remembered. Priam crouched at Achilles' feet and wept loudly for the man slain Hector, and Achilles wept for his father and Patroclus. Together, their cries filled the tent. In this moment, Achilles shows empathy and recognizes Priam's suffering, bringing him closest to Hook's definition of love, as it becomes an act of understanding and connection rather than vengeance or avoidance. While Achilles was willing to accept his own death and his prior lamentations to his mother, his prior mourning only reflected his own regrets. Quote, then I will die soon, for I could not protect my friend from death, and he fell from the home because I failed to save him from ruin. Let us set aside thoughts of grief and stifle the pain that fills our hearts, for now I must go after Hector, who killed my dear friend. While his prior lamentations reflects a deep emotional bond between Achilles and Patroclus, his choice to, quote, set aside thoughts of grief in favor of vengeance only continued the cycle of violence. Achilles' narrative can be said to serve as a case study to the perils of misinterpreting love, illuminating how unchecked emotions such as rage, grief, and fear can be mistaken for love, and thereby result in the perpetuation of the cycle of violence and suffering. War, even when fought for love, breeds only suffering. Hooks asserts that, quote, love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely both an intention and an action. However, in the narrative of Achilles and the story of the Iliad, love is rarely an act of will towards the betterment of another. Rather, it is used to justify cycles of violence.